Well, analyst Britt Hume. I love the Florida color scheme, Britt. It works for you. You're just rubbing it in that you're down there and we're not. But
well, thank you, Megan.
But you look good.
Nice here.
So you got to love Harry Reid. I love this quote. I would hope that administratively the president will do what he can to take a look at deportations. But he is being burdened by the law as it exists, and we need to change it. That darn law is such a burden.
Well, it is a burden, Megan, and I think the president, so far at least, in terms of deportations of the kind that Harry Reid is talking about, has recognized the law and has not done what Harry Reid wants him to do. In fact, he's deported quite a number of people. It remains to be seen whether the president will do what Harry Reid says, and if he does, whether that will stand. The question that was raised by Shannon's report, and which we've talked about before, Megan, is if Congress tries to halt this, it's not going to do it legislatively because it'll never get out of the Senate. And the president would never sign a law that reined him in on any of these things, or a measure to do that. And if he feels free to ignore the law anyway, it hardly matters. So the question is whether some litigation could be mounted outside of Congress by an injured party of some kind that would get the court's attention and end up in an order on the president to cease and desist from this sort of thing, where he's outside the executive authority that he's been granted by Congress.
By the time that happens, I mean, having practiced law for 9 years, it takes a long time. I had some cases I started as a first year that were still there by the time I was a ninth-year attorney. It takes a long time. Who's going to even be in the White House by the time such a litigation would get resolved, Britt? And as a practical matter, is that a real solution?
Well, it's not clear to me how quickly it would happen. It is certainly possible that these cases, counting all the possible appeals and the delays between them, it could drag on for as long as you say. The courts can act more urgently when there's reason to do so, however, and that might be the case here. The other question, of course, is whether this authority that the president has taken for his own on his own would still be around and therefore available to the next president, who would perhaps be a Republican.
Right.
And what that could then mean, and some of these people like Harry Reid who are advocating this sort of thing might think differently then. My sense about it, though, is, Megan, is that it would be likely that Republicans running in 2014 and 2016, and whoever runs for president on the Republican ticket in 2016, would be campaigning against this sort of what they would consider to be executive excess. And it would therefore make it a little awkward for them, having run against it, to then start using it once in office. So,
okay, but if they did, that may be
a long-term consequence that wouldn't come about.
If they did, what are the likes of Harry Reid and others going to say? I mean, the Democrats and many in the mainstream media have been all but silent on President Obama's use of executive authority in some controversial matters. I mean, Jonathan Turley, left-leaning law professor, was on the program twice last week, sounding the alarm on this and saying they ignore this at their own peril.
Well, that's precisely the point. And of course, what you would expect to happen is precisely what's happened with President Obama. You may recall, as Megan noted, as Shannon noted, Megan, President Obama spoke out strongly against what he considered to be the excessive use of executive power by President Bush. He said it was one of the great problems facing the country, and one he promised to reverse. Now, of course, he's got a bad case of shoe on the other foot disease, which would doubtless afflict Democrats if a president of the other party started doing this again once that president had come to power, say in 2016 or beyond.
Yeah, shoe on the other foot disease. I think there's a vaccination for that now. We'll have to look into that before 2016.
Believe me, it's a bipartisan affliction, and it's been going on for years. It's not an epidemic at the moment, but we could get there.
Britt, great to see you.
Thanks, Megan.